So, hello everybody. Thank you so much for joining our PR Reimagined webinar. The webinar, The Digital Remedy, How Brands Are Standing Out During COVID-19. And this is actually our first virtual PR Reimagined event. We normally hold this event in person, which, I think the whole world used to do things in person, but we're living through very different times. And so we decided to also, do what any good brand is going to do and still connect with its audience and hold a virtual PR Reimagined event. So I'm really excited to be here today, and I'm so glad that you've taken the time out of your day to join us. My name is Sarah Torville. I'm the CEO and founder of Media Frenzy Global. We work with innovative and disruptive brands to tell their story. And so we're seeing some incredible things happening right now in the world of marketing and in the world of brand. And some of those stories we're going to be sharing with you today. I'm very excited to allow our panelists to introduce themselves, but before I get them to do that, please use #GoThere on all your social media activities. If we can be trending today, that would be a great thing. But let me start by asking our amazingly smart, intelligent, and look at them, they're gorgeous looking people, introduce themselves. And Megan, I'm going to ask you to start, please.
I don't know about the Matrix are gorgeous, but that's very kind of you. Well, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Reagan Morgan. I'm the Director of Marketing for PFS. PFS is a global e-commerce solutions company. So in layman's terms, that's basically all of the technology and processes behind online retail and how you might buy your favorite shoes or jewelry or blouse or whatever it may be online. We help provide that technology and processes for major brands and retailers. So we're kind of the people behind the scenes for a lot of major brands. And like I said, I'm the Director of Marketing in charge of everything branding related, trade shows, media, etc. So it's a pleasure to be on today. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Megan. It's a pleasure to have you here. And Chantal, over to you.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. I am the CEO and co-founder of Reimagined Media Consulting, and we are a social media marketing firm based in Atlanta. And we help small businesses tell their story online through photography, video, content creation, and social advertising. And I'm thrilled to be here.
That's great. Thank you so much, Chantal. And Paul, my fellow British friend.
We got the accents with us.
Yeah, we have to stick together. So I love having you here with us as well. So over to you.
Yeah, I'm loving to be here, and it's nice to be online as well, so I can actually join you.
Yeah, very good.
So so I'll just introduce myself. I'm Paul Stellard. I'm the International MD at Barclay Communications. As Sarah mentioned, we are a UK-based agency based in Reading, just outside of London. We specialise in PR, video, content, and we also do a lot of design for our clients. As I mentioned, I'm the International MD, so I actually look after our international offices and our partners. But I also wear another hat, and I'm the MD of our sister brand, which is Arlington Research, which is a full-service market research consultancy that specialises in quant, qual, and desk research.
That's great. Thank you, Paul. So it's great. We've got a real spectrum of different disciplines actually on this webinar today. So we're really going to be able to touch across different platforms and talk about what we're seeing. So I'm going to kick off really with the first question, and this question is going to go to you, Reagan. So is it appropriate for companies to be promoting their brands at this time? What are you seeing in your business? And tell us a little bit about what PFS is doing for branding right now.
Sure. So I absolutely think it's still appropriate to promote your business online, or in any channel at this point, primarily because, we all have bills to pay. We all have revenue to be generated, and if revenue is not being generated, you have the risk of layoffs, you have the risk of companies going under, especially small businesses. And so anything that you can do to continue to promote your brands at this time is important to keep business going, to keep life going, to keep people employed, and to keep people putting food on the table. However, depending on the type of industry you're in, that can be harder than normal during this time, depending on what your product is, what your service is, what you do from there. I think that it can certainly be it can be differentiating, but it can also be very difficult. So right now at PFS, some of the things that we've been doing and kind of the exercise that we had to go through a couple weeks ago, whenever this all started to occur, was we really asked ourselves 5 questions. We looked at, what should the tone be in our external messaging, whether that's email marketing, whether that's social, whatever it may be. So we wanted to be very cognizant of what the tone was in what we were putting out, that it was respectful, that it was, not tone deaf by any means. We wanted to put ourselves in our target market shoes. We wanted to say, what would they want right now? They probably don't want to be sold to very heavily right now. So what would they want? Would they want information? Would they want advice? What would that be?
Yeah.
We talked about, how often we wanted to put things out from a digital touch point. We then also kind of looked at our own portfolio and said, what services and products do we have that could actually be helpful right now? We're fortunate there's a couple things that we can do to help retailers and brands stay in business, because brick and mortar is virtually closed across the globe. But there are certain things we can only do in a certain time frame. So we had to really examine ourselves on what we can do to help those digital brands. And then lastly, how can we be helpful and provide information? Whether or not it's actually about our company or about what we do, is there information that we can provide that is useful and helpful for our brands? So that was kind of the exercise that we went through in examining our strategy, and that's what we're doing currently from a social media and a digital standpoint, since all of our shows for the second quarter have been canceled.
Yeah, very good. So you touched on some really good points. Like you said, we have to keep business going, so it's important to still be communicating, but it's asking the right questions. I'm so glad that you did that as a company. Like, rather than what do we want to put out, what do people want to hear? And so how nice to turn that around, because I think a lot of brands kind of sometimes forget to do that. So what about Chantal, from a social media standpoint? Is this the time? I mean, social media is a great platform, as we know, especially when it comes to sharing things on the day when they're happening. So what are you seeing happen from a social standpoint?
Yeah, I think I certainly resonate with both of the points that you guys just said. I think it also depends on, is your good or service something that can help someone right now? So how is it providing value? I heard a quote last week, it was sell or die. And so thinking about that quote and kind of Reagan, what you said, like, you have to keep the lights on right now, and trying to maybe reframe the thought around selling to adding value and doing top of line funnel type of work. So yeah, certainly we manage over 55 different brands on social media, and with the exception of 2 of them, everyone is we're still pushing out content, but just the content's completely shifted.
So what's the main shift that you're seeing in that content, do you think? Like what's gone away and been replaced with what?
I think it depends. We've got a lot in the food and beverage space and restaurants, so their entire strategy shifted. I mean, they're now doing curbside and takeout and family meals. So the actual pictures in addition to the copy, and then some of the brands, it's just small copy changes and less, and just more being sensitive to what's happening right now.
Yeah, very good. And Paul, I mean, obviously Berkeley is a European agency. So what about from a UK perspective? What are you, or even in Europe, obviously, I know you're going through the same things as we are in the US. I know the UK though, the lockdown is pretty extreme. I think it's even more extreme than it is here. So how's that being handled?
Yeah, well, we're in week 2 of the lockdown, and our colleagues in Germany are around the same time, but then our colleagues in Spain I think they're in week 3, approaching week 4. So we keep using the term the new normal that we're all doing. Fundamentally, is like the biggest change to normal life since World War II, really. So it's huge. But I think absolutely agreeing with the other guys, that I think that the big key thing now is to listen to your community. So that can be like people locally, but for brands and businesses, that's your employees, that's your customers, that's potential people, and understanding what challenges they're facing and creating content that's going to appeal to them. And I think fundamentally, yes, the content that we're putting out there needs to change, but the actual demand for content is huge now. And whether that's video or just interesting content, people are sat at home, they're spending more time online, they're not rushing around on commutes, there is this desire for content, and people are hungry for it. And as long as it's authentic and relevant, then and you're not being crass and overly selling, then there is a market there. And I think fundamentally, absolutely, now is the time to work smart with your marketing. Don't let the lights go out. If you go dark, then people are going to be sat there and they're going to question whether you've got any longevity as a business. If you disappeared, are they really going to spend money with you? Because they're sat there worrying, well, I might spend money with you and then you're not going to be here in a couple of months' time. So actually being able to talk in a respectful way, using the right tone, not overly selling and not being crass, is a really, really important thing at this moment in time. And to acknowledge the situation that we're all facing.
Yeah. Can you give me any examples, Paul, of brands that you think are being really successful in how they're connecting with their customers right now?
Yeah, so if I think about it from my personal perspective, so obviously in the UK, the schools have shut down. So I've got 3 children and trying to juggle work and stopping kids from running in the backgrounds is the new norm. In the UK, there was a thing, and someone was interviewed on the BBC News about a year ago. While he was being interviewed, his children came in behind him. And we all sat and thought, God, that's horrendous. Now, if I get through a day without that happening, it's the normal. So thinking about that, some of the brands that I think have done really well is Amazon, for example. So they have made books free to be streamed for children. So when they're sat at home and they need stuff to do, they need educational things, that's really cool. Then there's another brand which I'd never even heard of until a couple of weeks ago, Broadway HD. So, and basically you can go online and you can stream Broadway shows for free. That. Which great, again, fabulous. My daughter's loving it. She's watched Cats and but that's for me, that's a really cool way of a brand giving away some content, showing it's arrived. It's been shared all over social, and I'd never heard of them. But I signed up for it, and in 3 months' time, once that free trial is over, I might continue using it because my daughter might be addicted to it. Yeah. And then, the other sort of things which I think are doing right, and is that message of hope. And I was looking around last night at some of the what some brands were doing, and I saw a very short little video clip by Pirelli, the tire manufacturer, and it's just an overview of a city empty, and the thing is, when this is all over, we'll hit the road. And they're not selling anything, but it's that hey, come on, guys, get through this, and at the end of it, then we can go and enjoy ourselves again.
Yeah, no, clever messaging. I agree, and connecting with the issue and not outwardly selling. So, what about you, Reagan? What are you seeing brands which you think are doing a really great job at connecting with their customers right now?
Yeah, so to me, this kind of falls into a few different categories because I think, like I said earlier, depending on what service you sell, what product you sell, what industry you're in, you can be at a disadvantage. So somebody that's in a very highly digital space, that's high in tech, it's going to be more difficult than if you have kind of a consumer-facing brand that somebody might be missing out on. So like some of the things that I saw, very similar to what Paul was talking about. I'm a big sports fan, and so a lot of the call it here in the States, the Major League Baseball, the National Hockey League, and the NBA, and things like that. They're putting out a lot of like old games, things like that. They're allowing you to reminisce and enjoy, old historical games that are great moments and things like that. And so while you can't have the live product, because that's what the product is, it's live entertainment. Right now, they're putting out things that it makes you kind of feel like you're watching these things live, even though you probably likely know what happened. So there's things like that. One of my favorite brands here in the U.S. and especially in the state of Texas is Yeti. Yeti, for those of you unfamiliar, they sell high-end ice chests and drinks and drink coolers and things like that. And they have a very kind of rustic Austin, Texas kind of feel to it, and they're putting out things of a lot of their brand ambassadors. So they're people in New Zealand, they're surfers, they're almost extreme adventurous out there. And so, it allows you to kind of look and see, boy, that would be really cool to do that. It allows you to kind of escape from this reality right now. Similar to Paul, yes, they're selling drink cups and things, but it's not a commercial for it. It's talking about people and ambassadors. So that's really cool. Even our local zoo, the Dallas Zoo, you can't go to the zoo right now, but they're doing behind the scenes footage where you can go and you can meet the keepers and people and stuff like that, which is really cool. But from a technology standpoint, some of the brands that I've seen done really good work. They're not pushing their product and not going through forcing things down. One of our clients is ScanSource. They sell devices and other scanning scan devices you would use in distribution centers and other technology hubs. They're simply putting out like a thank you to their employees and vendors out there right now. They're not pushing their product. They're simply just giving that good, warm feeling. Marketo, I even saw, is putting a lot of good just tips and tricks for people that are undergoing a lot of new digital marketing for the first time. So there's a lot of things like that to where you're exactly what Paul's saying. You're not selling anything. You're giving something helpful, and you're just giving off a good feeling.
Yeah, that's great.
I think that helpful thing is really, really key. And I've seen a lot of B2B brands also doing guides to working from home. Especially coming from a lot of freelance journalists who are well used to working in that way and giving those tips. So I think where you're giving something away and something that's useful and helpful, then that is absolutely the key.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So Chantal, go ahead.
Well, Rick, when he mentioned the zoo, I immediately thought of Tiger King and Netflix, but won't digress there. But when I think of brands doing really well, I love to see how these brands are pivoting and the innovation specifically in the food and beverage space, the fitness space. There's so many brands that are pausing membership fees and just doing online streaming, which I think is incredible for retention.
Yeah.
A local brand called Gusto here, they have on their website now, you can actually feed someone on the front lines, and they're delivering food to medical professionals, which I think is incredible. So those are just a couple that came to mind for me.
That's really nice. Chantal, what are you seeing in terms of like crisis communications? Obviously some brands are in trouble, and is social media a platform to use when you're in a crisis? I mean, what is your recommendation to some of the companies which might go out of business? They may not be here in a month's time. And so what do you say to those brands?
Yeah, I think that it's been really interesting to watch a lot of local, restaurants and bars that I love, because they weren't leveraging social media before, or because, this retail boutique didn't have an online e-commerce platform. They have no way of sharing their message right now to their consumers. And I am afraid for them. As far as messaging, we don't have anyone in the healthcare space, so I can't speak to true crisis management. I think for our brands, it's how do we pivot quickly and stay open as long as we can, or keep the lights on and not have to lay off anyone. So it's been crisis, but less true crisis, I think, and more of just us having to adjust and pivot quickly.
Yeah. So it's funny, I got an email yesterday from a brand that I love called Alala, and they sent me an email, and it was very heartspoken. I mean, it was like their business, they're a retail outlet clothing company, and they rely on the likes of bigger stores to sell their products. And I admire them. I replied to them. I admire their honesty and transparency. I mean, they're letting their customers know that this is a difficult time, stick with us. And it made me want to stick with them. I mean, I'm going to put an order in. So it was very clever. It worked for me, but for them. But, you know, I think, what do you think about the whole, this is the time, I believe, for transparency. Authenticity is probably the better word. Do we all agree that, you know, we've all been saying we want authentic brands, and social media has allowed authenticity to come through, but surely we mean it more than ever now. Chantal, what do you think to that?
Absolutely. Yeah, and also the hope. I think, Reagan, you mentioned, or maybe it was Paul, just around the hope. I think we've all now accepted that this is the new normal, and you know, we're going to be stuck inside for a little bit longer. And I think people are now more than ever craving that hope and that inspiration and cheering on the brands and wanting to be there and to support them in any way. And so looking for that type of content to actually know what the action item I need to take to help them. Like, what is that?
Yeah. So, Reagan, what channels do you think are appropriate now, or maybe a better way, what marketing tactics do you think are appropriate now, and you would advise brands to do over other tactics? I mean, is there something you say, you know, you should avoid these particular tactics right now, like, for example, you know, maybe like PPC, or, you know, that type of real targeted advertising? Would you suggest that's something we should drop right now and focus on other type of means?
I don't know that you drop it entirely. And again, I will always default back to, I think the answer to every business's question for marketing is what is best for you. Because what is best for a retailer and a clothing company is different than from an e-commerce solutions company, and different from a research firm or somebody like that. So, you know, we personally, we have not stopped our PPC. In fact, if there are brands, retailers out there, because let's just hypothetically say, you know, we know their brick and mortar is closed. They have zero money and revenue coming in from that. And maybe their e-commerce channel is not up to snuff, and they know that they need some help with this, for, you know, whether it's the short term or the long haul. We want to make sure that we're available and relevant to them, and to either, whether that's some little bit of free consulting right now, or if we can truly help them with services, because it is their only channel open right now for revenue. You mentioned you had a clothing brand that was going through that. You know, we're seeing a big boom in our business because we operate websites for all of these different companies, and it's their only source of revenue. You know, we're at peak type volumes at this point. So, you know, from a tactics perspective, you know, you certainly just want to be very cognizant of who your target market is and how they would normally consume the content. And if you don't believe that they're going to be strolling a lot of social media, so, you know, from a B2B perspective, we may or may not put a lot of things on LinkedIn. We're going to try that a little bit. You know, their email's going to be more flooded than normal, because you're going to get an email from somebody now within your own organization that you might normally have a face-to-face conversation with. So email marketing is probably something that I would probably back off a little bit, depending on, you know, your brand and how your consumers, you know, interact with you. So I don't necessarily think that there's any one particular tactic that any business should just stop doing, but it's all about examining what your target market, what their priorities are right now, and how they might interact differently with your brand based on the busyness that they're going to have within their own work from home life right now.
Yeah.
One tactic that comes to mind for me is scheduling content. So we would, you know, create a content calendar, put a plan in place, schedule it out, and that is, I mean, that process is completely broken now. It needs to be more real time, because things are changing so quickly. That's
true. Being very, very nimble, very flexible, and, you know, every week is a little bit different. That's a very good point.
Yeah, the word plan has kind of gone out the window, hasn't it? We need to all be very agile in our communications. Paul, what are you seeing? Is there anything different you're seeing from a European perspective? I mean,
yeah, I think that one of the key things is not to ambulance chase as such. This isn't a marketing opportunity to capitalize on. And for example, I know, Chantal, you mentioned the Netflix series. For example, if they were putting out marketing, what you'd hope they'd be saying is, if you're looking for a box set, why not try this? what you don't want to see is brands going out there saying, instead of during the lockdown, why don't you watch this? And I've seen a lot of clunky messaging out there. You know, for example, I saw a phone company, and I won't say who they were, but I saw that they were saying that we might not be able to protect you from the virus, but we can protect your phone bills. And I just thought it was really crass, really horrible way to try and ambulance chase this topic that's really affecting and impacting people's lives. So I think fundamentally that, yeah, look, there are tactics that will work for different audiences, and you have to listen to your audience and understand how to speak to them. But fundamentally, the biggest tactic is don't be an arsehole. In my eyes, yeah, now is the time to be humble. It's to think about your tone of voice, to be clear, calm, and consistent in your communications, and think about, you know, how you want to be remembered in a few months' time when the world is coming out of this. You as a brand want to be one that's remembered as the ones that looked after its staff, that, you know, gave out interesting information that could help people, that, you know, tried to work with, you know, people on the front line and made sure that, you know, groceries were going out, or you were helping the health industry. That's what people are going to remember. What they're not going to remember is that you could help save their phone bill.
No, you're completely right. We have to be so careful with what we say, and very sensitive to people's situation as well, because even our own situations are probably a lot better than a lot of people, you know, just all over the world, and just being very careful with how you word things. It's very important. What about, Chantal, you know, what is your advice for brands right now in terms of getting it right, so that it, you know, when we do get past this, they're not, you know, their brand hasn't been impacted in a negative way? Is there any other advice beyond kind of tone of voice and being careful with your messaging that you think needs to really be considered right now?
I mean, the thing that comes to mind is just staying true to your brand, not trying to, I mean, there's so much content out there, and you're seeing so many brands say so many things, and not trying to absorb that and then take it as your own and don't try to become someone that you're not through this. I mean, sure, certainly pivot if you need to, but I wouldn't. I mean, you don't have to also be putting out how to work from home blogs. I mean, stay true to your brand, your messaging, your target market through this, and yes, don't be crass and be consistent.
That's a really good point. You're right. Sticking to your brand. The brand has been built for a reason. And you got to continue to be that brand, but just be, like I say, be agile and adapt to what your customers need. There's so much to be said about the tonality and what you put out, and just, I think that's the biggest consideration I want every brand to think about right now is, how would this, if you receive this, how would it make you feel, and being sensitive to that. So you know, thinking about digital marketing, and how do we think the COVID-19 virus has really kind of helped push digital marketing along right now? I mean, you made a really good comment, Chantal, that, you know, people who didn't do social media literally right now are at a loss. You know, their channels aren't there. They haven't established a good network. And, you know, this is the time when it's easy to sit back and think, you know what, we should have done this. You know, what is your advice? Like, what can we really be leveraging right now, which we think is really going to help to really push digital marketing along even further? Any comments from the panelists?
I can talk a little bit specifically on our team. Our team within our industry is primarily built for lead generation within trade shows. It's not our only lead generation tactic, but it's where we spend the majority of our marketing budget every year. And obviously, we were able to get a few in this year. We had a 3 in the first quarter, and we barely got one in as this was all kind of starting. But, you know, as we've kind of had to shut that down and very pivot to what Chantal and what you, Sarah, were talking about, you know, my team isn't necessarily built for a full digital marketing solution. Yeah, we do it. It's not like it's a foreign concept to us, but to churn out campaign after campaign after, that's, where normally it's kind of sprinkled in here and there. It's going to be our core focus for at least a few months, if not, the better part of the year, until some of these shows get rescheduled. So it's been interesting. We've kind of had to evaluate our own internal processes. We've had to figure out where the gaps in communication might be, where we're normally able to be a little bit more nimble and kind of just come up with something on the fly. It's got to be much more rigid and structured, like a true marketing firm would go through it. And so it's been educational for me on a leadership side of, how much do I provide guidance versus how much do I let my team just kind of run with it. But at the same time, if we lose sight of who we are, which I love what Chantel said there, don't be somebody that you aren't. The shiny toys over there, that's great for their brand, but it may not be great for you. And so keeping everybody on earth and making sure that they're still doing their job, while it may be a little bit different for them, providing them the support has been very key. We've tried to, we're going to have a lot of great case studies that come out of this time for us as we've been helping brands stay in business and things. The time probably isn't great right now to try to go tell those, but as we gather them and we try to, while it's still fresh on everybody's mind within my company, we're going to have some great content moving forward to kind of look back on. You talk about looking in the future. I look to the future for us to be able to create something for us to be able to look back on and say, look, in this time of need, this is what we were able to do to help companies win a more aggressive sales strategy would be more appropriate at that time. So that's something that we're looking to do right now, that we want to have an ear to our business. We want to listen to what's going on for the clients that we're currently serving. And then just make sure we're taking good notes and capture the content. So when the time is right, we have the ability to use it.
Yeah. So let me just ask you, so, with those events, and I'm sure this applies to a lot of people listening today, obviously events got cancelled. Many, like PR Reimagined, are running in a virtual way. What have you moved to then? What are you taking your resources to replace the events? Because I imagine that's where you get a lot of leads.
It is. So there's a couple different things we're doing. Number one, we are looking pretty aggressively to sponsor other digital type reports that are going to come out. People will still consume data and research as things coming out. Mm-hmm. So we will look to sponsor some of those just purely from a brand awareness perspective. Yeah. We're actually undergoing here, not only in the UK, but we're going to also do it in the US here pretty soon. Just some customer research. I talked about earlier, can we provide information that's helpful at this time? Well, commissioning our own research to find out what consumers are doing at this point is helpful information right now. It's helpful for us to understand what consumers want to do. It's even more helpful that we can provide this not only to our clients, but to prospective clients right now that are trying to adjust their own strategies right now from an e-commerce perspective. And so those are two of the biggest things we're doing right now, that if we provide good, helpful content, no, we're not going to put a gated landing page on there right now to an extent to get that content, because we want to be helpful. But if somebody is interested in talking to us, we've got a specific page that we put up that talks about what we're doing. And if we can help you, here's a little form to contact us so that we know how you can get a hold of us. So that helpful information and really just making sure that our brand is still out there and relevant, and whether or not they're ready to buy now or they're ready to buy 6 months from now, that's a win for us from a marketing strategy. Yeah.
The customer research, that's really, really interesting. So taking the time now to ask those customers questions and gathering that. And that's just obviously not from a PR and marketing perspective, that's insightful to the business too. So Paul, you obviously lead Arlington Research. So are you seeing a real uptick right now in brands wanting to kind of ask more questions to their customers?
Yeah, absolutely. And from two different approaches. So there are companies that are doing stuff like Reagan's is doing, and they're asking really interesting questions that get insight into the market as it stands today, that their customers are going to find useful and interesting. But then there are others that are also sat there and they're asking questions about what the world is going to look like, and what are the pain points that people are having, and where do they need to be thinking and looking at in 3 months' time, in 6 months' time? And again, that information is going to be, coming out in a couple of months, and it's going to be, that's the sort of things that people are going to be looking for. The other part is that a number of companies are actually conducting their own research just to understand what the market is and what is happening around them, and what they should be putting out there, what people want to hear, what people want to see. And I think when you were saying about digital marketing, and I sort of touched on it earlier, I was saying about my kids running in. I think everyone is, people are embracing stuff that they haven't thought of or used before. But also audiences are a bit more sympathetic to you trying stuff. No one's going to judge you if my kids run into the background. But also, more than any time, Chantel said that there are brands out there that haven't got platforms on social media. Now more than any time could be that time to embrace those and try something new that you maybe haven't. Live streaming an event, or doing what we're doing here today. I'm thankful that you are, so I could actually join you from the UK.
Yeah, I know.
Platforms like TikTok that people have never used before, that you could potentially dip your toe in and see if it works for your brand, if you can speak to a community. But fundamentally, it's got to be the right platform, and it's got to be for the right reason. And again, research, it doesn't have to be in depth. You don't have to ask thousands and thousands, but as long as you're listening and responding with that and putting stuff out that's helpful, then
Awesome. Really great points there. And Chantel, I'd love to kind of know from your perspective, are you finding hordes of new customers coming through saying, I need help with social media, and like what is the attitude there?
Yeah, we've thankfully started to branch into different industries we were never in before. So we are starting to work with a lawyer, and we just signed a online tutoring company that's doing virtual school days and live stream classes. So that's been really neat. I know this isn't a trade show conversation, but can I share like 3 tactics that I heard from a conversation specifically to your notes, Reagan, on trade shows?
Please do. Yes.
It just is interesting to think about all these trade shows that are no longer happening still have a list of people that were going to go. And most of them are very open to sharing that list with you if you had registered. And then thinking, how can I take that list and convert it to something online? So people are connecting with these people on LinkedIn. They're sending email messages, but instead of just copy, including a personalized video to that person. With all the swag that they had that they were going to hand out at the trade shows, they're now shipping that to people just as like a fun gift at home. I think there's still a lot of really neat things. And I do wonder long term, will there be less importance of having the in-person trade shows if we can just get creative with how we repurpose those conversations?
Yeah, that's really great insight. Yeah, it's forcing us to be creative. It's forcing us to look at how we do things. And I mean, everyone says, and I do believe this, that only good things can come out of this, and I think it applies to our industry very much indeed. So some really great discussions. So I just going back to the research piece, I find this bit really interesting, because I've had questions where customers have said, is now the right time to ask questions to my industry? Like, are people going to be answering with the right mindset? The world is changing and it's continuing to change. Should we wait another month before we ask those questions? So I'm just interested, Paul, on your point of view there. Like, is now a good time?
Well, it depends on the questions that you're asking. So the big one has to be that, yes, any time it is right, because what you're actually doing is a temperature check. You're seeing what the general public or customers or potential customers are feeling at that moment in time. And what I think that the real key is timing. And as with from my perspective, any piece of research is only as good as the questionnaire that you actually produce. If you get the questionnaire right, then the research will work. So it's really understanding what you want to get out of a piece of research. It's making sure that the questions are timely, are written in a respectful way. And then if that's the case, then yes, there's no reason not to ask people now, because it is of interest to others, how the rest of the world is coping with scenarios.
Yeah. So really, really great discussion, and we have some questions. Actually, we're going to move into the kind of Q&A piece from our participants. Please, people have been sending me some questions. Please do send them now, because I'm going to be reading some of them out, and so that we can answer them. But so the first, it's not so much a question; it's a statement, but it's interesting. Saying LinkedIn is quieter than usual right now. There's an opinion that it's quieter than usual. And they, definitely agree that that is what's happening, but that emails are inundated with COVID messaging that's not sticking. No more vendors saying we're here for you. It's like, when do we get to a point where we go, okay? It's like when New Year, when it's Happy New Year. When do you stop saying Happy New Year? Sorry, that's on a lighter note, and I know this is much more serious than that. But there is a timing piece. When do you stop addressing it and saying we're here for you? And I've noticed, and with the brands that we work with too, people are now wanting to talk about what's next. Like, we've got to now be hopeful as to we're getting past this hump. Let's talk about how we rebound and what's next. But I'd love to get people's opinions on the panel in terms of, like, when do we stop saying we're here for you? Should we have stopped?
I'll give my quick opinion on that. I certainly think, and I go back to the tone, I think in all cases, the tone of your messaging should still have that hidden in the background, whether or not you actually say those words,
yeah.
we're here for you. You can have little subtle messages.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the things that we're going to end up doing now, I mean, our fulfillment centers are open, and they're shipping packages, and we're getting people their orders, whatever that may be. It could be soap, it could be jewelry, it could be clothing, whatever it may be. And one of the things we want to do is continue to make sure that people understand that we do have some workers that are technically, you could call it, in harm's way. No, they're not medical professionals. They're not serving the sick and caring for them. But just a little bit of thank yous and a little bit of stories, and understand that there's a lot of people that are working behind the scenes to make sure that you have bananas at the grocery store, that there's milk delivered, toilet paper, whatever it may be. There's a lot of people out there still working, and those that are in that industry, I think you need to continue to thank and show what that is. But yeah, depending on your industry, it can get old after a while. I certainly see that, and we all want something to cleanse the palate every now and then, something that will escape us from the inundated of how are you doing, and things like that. I think that's a key aspect that we all have to remember, that life is going to go on. It's certainly going to be different, but the timing of that is a very critical decision, and it's a tough question to pinpoint and give a true answer to, based on your company and based on the timing of what's going on with your particular company.
Yeah.
So make me think of the aren't habits formed? Is it 21 days, 25 days? There's some just around kind of also where are people at in the life cycle of their shelter in place. I mean, Paul, you said you're 2 weeks in. I think in Atlanta we're coming up on 3 or 4. I mean, I also wonder if people still are saying things like that because we're all in different phases of this journey.
Yeah.
But I do wonder if any of it will switch once we've all been around like that 20 to 30 day mark, and it's just sunk in that this is the new reality.
Yeah. Well, actually,
going back to your email, Sarah, you were saying that your inbox is full of these emails saying, hey, we're still here. I think one of the things I would like to see less of those is the first up, but I don't disagree with brands actually reaching out, but I think if they're going to reach out, then they need to be reaching out with something to say, or something that is they're actually giving something useful. Just saying, hey, we're here, and do you want to buy something from us? Because we're really desperate. It sounds desperate, I think, and I think you need to be aware of that. Hearing that LinkedIn is quieter, that would be somewhere that some of these brands maybe should be putting something out there to let people see that the lights are still on. Thinking about newsletters that you're sending out. So you're actually sending out something that's useful and interesting to people, telling stories about the work you're doing, rather than just saying, hey, we're here, can you help?
Yeah, no, I agree. Providing valuable information is very important. Also had a comment as well about internal communication efforts too. And I'm not sure whether how much people on the panel here get involved in internal comms. And Reagan, I don't know whether you do with your company, whether you handle the internal communications as well, but making sure that your brand messages also align with what you're communicating internally to your employees. And so, is that something, I mean, I definitely agree with that. We cannot forget our ambassadors are our employees, and they need to hear it probably first before anybody else hears it. And it needs to be consistent.
Yeah, I've been involved with it to an extent. I'm very fortunate that we have some strong leaders within our company that have really taken charge of that. And I completely agree with the comment that was made there, that you want it to align with what you're talking about. You don't want to be out there pushing a particular message when you internally are not following that at all. That just comes across as hypocritical, and it can really alienate internal employees over time. So we have been very intentional with our communication of what offices are open, what offices are 100% work from home, what offices are really a choice at this point of whether or not you want to work from home. And just being very crisp and clear with what our expectations are from a leadership team to the rest of the employee base. And so how that matches back to social media or any other externally facing venue or channel is, if we're saying one thing in our social channel, but really we're telling our internal employees something different, that's where something would be very, very wrong. And sometimes the best thing to do is just try to avoid certain those types of conversations if you can. If you don't have anything productive to say, kind of like what Paul was saying a second ago, you don't have anything to give them, don't just say something for the sake of saying something. That's how you'll get caught in your own caught in your own words or anything like that. That's kind of what we see from our company. We have offices all over the world. Every office in every country is just handling things a little bit differently, even though most of them are closed, if you will, right now. So it's definitely a struggle and something that you have to keep in mind to make sure that those two things are aligned 100%.
Yeah. So it's interesting. Another comment we got through is about, and I do love stories like this. So they gave an example of the L'Oreal story. So L'Oreal has transformed, some of their plants which they use into helping keep hospital workers safe during the incubation. So we're hearing all these heartfelt, positive stories of brands, especially big brands, which really can go and maybe they're sewing masks and now delivering masks around the world, or they are transforming a warehouse into something else. And should we be sharing that news? What do you think? Do you regard that as PR that we should be actually announcing, or what is, Paul, what's your thoughts around that? Like, do you encourage your customers, if they're doing something pretty special like that, do you encourage that they promote it right now? Do they send a press release? Is it something they just share on social media? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, and it depends on what they're doing, but I think if they are doing something that is genuinely good, and actually it would do the world good to know about that these things are happening and might encourage other companies to follow suit, then I absolutely think it's the right time to be doing exactly that. You said about L'Oreal, I just think in the UK, like Brewdog set up at their plant, and they were looking to make hand sanitizer and we're putting those out and giving that away for free. So I think things that when these companies are doing stuff for good and it's going to help, then yes, we should shout about that. We should hear about it, because it's important for other companies to hear, and they will follow suit, hopefully.
Yeah.
I'll jump in on a quick comment on that. I completely agree with what Paul said, and when you share things like that, I think don't try to turn it around about yourself. A lot of times a natural reaction for marketers, even salespeople, is to share something like that and then turn it, to get somebody's attention, and then turn it back towards themselves on, well, here's why you should listen to me now. Now is not the time for that. No. It is simply sharing good information out there, regardless of whether or not it has anything to do with your business or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And people will remember that. That's the good PR piece here. So you're absolutely right. You shouldn't be selling this, but you can promote that you've done something. People will remember that, and then in 3 months, 4 months time down the line, they'll go, those guys, they stood up to be counted, and they did things the right way, and they tried to help others, and that will count for something for your brand.
Yeah.
Also, just going back to internal ambassadors and your team, what I'm seeing is a lot of companies that are doing things like that, their employees are sharing it. And so it's very authentic and they're proud of their company. And that's, I think, the best win as far from a PR standpoint. Like your own team talking about it without you even being asking them to talk about it.
Yeah. A good friend of mine, she works for a company called Pegasystems, and I saw her sharing something on Facebook and on LinkedIn, said, hey, my company are helping make face masks for the medical professions. And I just thought, it's the sort of thing that she wouldn't have normally have shared on a normal week, but she was so proud of it, and she put it out there. They weren't selling anything; they were just saying, "Hey, our company rocks. Look what we're doing to try and help people." And people were it was genuine love underneath it, saying, "Yeah, this is a really cool thing. Well done, well done." And I just thought, yeah, actually, we should be shouting about it and celebrating these brands that are going that extra mile and trying to help humanity. Now's the time to celebrate those things, isn't it?
Yeah. But what do you say to the ones which think they have something special to talk about, but actually you can see right through it and it feels like they're selling? Because I mean, they're out there. It's like, unfortunately, this is a big platform for people to think they can jump on. But again, I mean, we've talked about it, give them something valuable, but it's amazing how many people think, this is a platform, I want to get on it. How can I be part of this? But it's, it's going to get lost.
I've only thankfully had one experience like that so far. A promotions company reached out and said, we can make face masks with our logo on it. And there was just something about it that, like, just give the face masks to the nurses that need them. Like, I don't need my own swagged face mask.
Yeah.
I don't.
Did it have that? Oh, so it didn't have their logo on it. It would have your logo on. Yeah, but still, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Oh yeah, exactly. We there's been a few like that for us too.
That's a little too self-serving for me.
Yeah, a little bit. And something I want to touch on is, I think it's a really important point. You and I talked about this the other day, Reagan, about business as normal. So, right now, it's okay to still provide normal business things. I mean, if you would normally go and share something, if you're a B2B company, B2C, it doesn't matter. But, at the end of the day, you're still providing a valuable solution or a service, and there's still really great material that you want to share. I don't think, we believe a blend is very important right now. So do you want to talk a little bit more about that, Reagan?
Yeah, I think I prefaced my point, I think, a little bit earlier. All of us want to return to some sense of normal at some point. We want distractions. There was an article the other day that was written about kind of all the negative things that were happening in retail and e-commerce right now. Again, this is my industry, so that's what I'm reading. And I read this whole thing. I couldn't believe how negative the thing was. And it's like, look, we get enough of that in our regular media today, as it is political environment, regardless. There's enough negativity out there to go around. And all I want is something that feels normal at times to get my mind off of it. And so that's where I think a good blend every now and then of just kind of what is your normal course of action here, to mix in with it, so that call it your social feeds or your inbox, wherever it is, returns to some sense of normalcy. If it's all about that, that's all you're going to think of. You're going to struggle to sleep at night. If it's relevant, good for you, and keep doing with it. But if you don't pivot towards normal business in some fashion, to be honest with you, some of us may forget about how to do it for a while. We get into some sense of normalcy, like how do I go back to doing other things? And so I think it's about cleansing the palate. It's about putting some things out there as well that allows somebody to escape from what may be a very troubling time, or confusing time at this point.
Yeah, great feedback. Thank you. Well, that is the end of our questions, and the conversation has been great. Really, really insightful. I'm hoping our audience has found it really insightful too. So I just really, unless anybody wants to share anything else, which is, you know, hot on your lips to share, please do so. Otherwise, I just really want to thank you all for joining. It's been a real pleasure. I love seeing you all here, and I've definitely learned something from you all as well. And for our watchers, our listeners, we're going to be sharing a playbook next week with you all on about how brands can stand out during the pandemic. And so watch out for that. It's going to have some of these really great tips. We'll just go into a little bit more detail on what's being shared today, but it'll be very insightful. So thank you, team. I appreciate it. Have a good rest of your day, and thank you everybody for joining us.
Thank you. Have a good Easter, everyone.
Appreciate it.
Bye.